Good day. When it comes to survival horror, the genre essentially does two things: annoy and bore. The quintessential survival horror game is ostensibly Resident Evil 1. It has all of the tropes associated with the genre. Bad controls, horde story, well, in-game that is, and inconsistent difficulty. Usually what you do in this game is wander around and get killed. You never have enough bullets, health, or any real weapons. This was the formula that most survival horror games followed. And some of the really bad ones even had gameplay where you couldn't even fight back. I'm assuming that in those games you played a character that was nothing more than a brain in a jar. Now, the makers of Resident Evil, Capcom, actually did the unthinkable. They made Resident Evil fun. The rather arbitrarily named Resident Evil 4 finally got survival horror right. You had plenty of guns, plenty of bullets, and plenty of health. And with that, you had plenty of bad guys to shoot down. The atmosphere worked really well, and you actually dreaded large-scale enemy encounters. The game had tremendous replay value, as you actually had reason to go back and try to find different items so you could unlock other items. Overall, this game was absolutely great, and spawned a new style of survival horror. So how do you make an already good style of gameplay even better? Well, you move to outer space, throw in some powered battle armor, have a few references to a number of sci-fi horror films, and call it Dead Space. Since this is a modern title, everything looks quite good. Everything has a fairly high polygon count, the texture work is high res and all that. To simplify it, the gameplay looks like a bloody cutscene. It's that good. The game uses the advanced hardware of the 360 to its fullest, and it's one of the few modern games that actually has enemy bosses that feel big. Not only that, but in certain portions of the game, there are moments where you have to just take a step back and marvel at how far we've come in game graphics. The music, unfortunately, is lacking considerably. It is barely audible, and when you hear it, it is usually just that one timpani note all the bloody time. I know that this is a horror title, and thus probably shouldn't have a driving rock soundtrack, but still, they could have done a little better than just one damn timpani note that plays over and over again. Sound design is suitably creepy. The monsters all sound like they should, and the weapons have a fairly decent bark to them. One thing that is pretty cool are the zero atmosphere portions. Here, there is no sound save what Isaac can hear inside of his suit. It serves for a pretty unnerving experience. Gameplay is similar to that seen in Resident Evil 4, although the camera is a bit better here and you can actually strafe. The HUD and the health bar are also a bit odd. The health is displayed down Isaac's back for some reason. It's not like he can see it. And the HUD is projected via hologram in front of Isaac in real time. The controls for the game are also quite good as well. Everything feels quite fluid and does not get too stiff. One important addition is this map line. Really, there is nothing more annoying than doing laps around the same corridor over and over again. In Dead Space, you have to deal with an automated store. So that being said, why can't you just hack into it? Or, easier still, search for some codes on the ship that can unlock it, so you can use it for free? The store does play a big role when you first play the game, as there will be times when you have a hard time finding any ammo or health. So, you have to use your hard-earned credits to buy essential health and ammo. And this really emphasizes the whole survival horror aspect. There will be times when you have to go around at half health with one health pack in reserve with only 6 bullets. This, of course, makes the game all that more suspenseful and really makes you ensure that every shot counts. One of the other selling features of Dead Space was the zero-G gameplay. Unfortunately, in practice, zero-G is not all that spectacular. Really, all it amounts to is it's jumping, and then that's it. You're just walking on the ceiling or walking on the walls or something like that. Overall, it's really not all that special. The in-game story is actually fairly decent. Essentially, you are an engineer named Isaac Clarke. You are sent to a ship called the Ishimura. They were having some technical problems. Somebody must have spilt coffee on the router or something. In addition to that, Isaac received a communique from his girlfriend that was actually fairly ominous. And had he or the rest of the crew of the shuttle actually watched the entire message, well, they would have known pretty much what they were getting into. But then again, had they done that, the game would have essentially been just a single cutscene where a battleship comes in and basically vaporizes the Ishimura. I suppose after that cutscene there might be another scene of Isaac fixing a space toilet somewhere, but needless to say the game wouldn't have been nearly as fun. The story itself actually had some thought put into it, and is actually quite compelling. Now, many will consider it to be B movie quality, but then again, when A movies consist of this, it's not that bad. The missions are all very well done. Now, in all reality, most survival horror games are strictly linear. But the problem is, you never know what you're supposed to do, and you never know where you're supposed to go. Here, you always know what you're supposed to do, and you always know where you're supposed to go. It makes this game considerably less annoying than most other survival horror games. As for the weapons, there are a fairly large number of them, but you can only carry 4. And I'm only going to cover the 4 that I have found to be the most useful. The weapons are unfortunately a little unbalanced. The first weapon you find is this plasma cutter, and ostensibly it's the best weapon in the game. Mainly, you'll be using it all throughout the game on just about every enemy, although be sure to use the secondary fire function where it turns the firing aperture horizontal, as it is vastly easier to hit your enemy's weak points this way. You then have the pulse rifle, and no, it's not the one from Aliens, rather it's just a standard las gun. It's the weapon you want to use if you want to conserve ammo in your more important weapons. This weapon here is the line gun. It fires large plasma cutting waves. That's good for severing the limbs of larger enemies. It is also good on enemies that have a large number of tendrils. This weapon is called the impact gun, and it is by far the most powerful and important weapon in the game. The impact cannon is absolutely essential for taking out enemies that have the yellow shoot me indicators. With the other weapons, you have to hit those indicators numerous times, whereas with this one, you only have to hit it once. And in time-sensitive situations, one shot is pretty much all you are going to get. The enemies themselves are not too terribly inspired, but they do their jobs fairly well. The manner by which you kill them is somewhat unique. You have to sever their limbs in order to take them down. This makes hitting one of them all the more difficult. Sure, it's easy to put 3,000 rounds in the center of mass, but putting a round into a flailing limb is something else entirely. There is one enemy, however, that is just awesome, and that is the unkillable human-alien hybrid. No matter what you do, you can't kill him with your conventional weapons. You have to use some sort of environmental weapon, like either a cryostasis chamber or ship thrusters. It's pretty frightening when you shoot something's legs and arms off and expect it to die, and it gets back up again. The final boss in this game is just exceptional. There really is no other word for it. Just look at the size of this thing. Not since Turok 2 have you been able to fight against a beast of this magnitude. Unfortunately though, despite its awesome nature, the battle itself is very streamlined and very simple. The ending for the game is somewhat annoying. After sending hordes of foes straight to hell, you would think that Isaac would be able to kick back in a shuttle all the way back to Earth. That's not exactly what happens. After he sits down and removes his helm, he is attacked by his former girlfriend, and one is led to believe that he is dead. But we all know what happened. After that scene ended, he picked up his helm and double-quick proceeded to beat the no-good corpse into a grayish mush. Think about this. He took out a giant monster. A little pissant grunt is not going to take him down. Thankfully, he has been confirmed to return in Dead Space 2. As of this recording, Dead Space 2 has yet to be released. But there has been a release of a prequel called Dead Space Extraction on the Nintendo Wii. Dead Space Extraction is an on-the-rails shooter that looks really good on the Wii. Gameplay itself is quite fun. There is nothing better than wasting hordes of enemies that once frightened you. Now if you're like me, and are a fan of action games, you might be somewhat reluctant to try Dead Space because it is a survival horror game. But rest assured, this game is nothing like a lot of the other survival horror games out there. There's plenty of guns, there's plenty of bullets, and if you're attentive, you won't get killed every 3 seconds. Really, the game is just fun, and it's definitely a worthwhile experience. So this is General Lotz, wishing you good, fear 1, good, fear 2, or whatever makes you happy.